Good evening and welcome back to the Canadian Orthodox Monastery of All Saints of North America. And we've been off the air for several days, partly whilst I was traveling to Pennsylvania for the Congress of the Orthodox Church in North America, and speaking in different places in Ohio. But we've received a number of requests to speak about some specific issues. And I'm going to respond to some of them. We've been asked to talk about witchcraft and magic in the Old Testament, where it's actually mentioned a few times, and also to say something about abortion and several other subjects. So we'll touch on some of them, perhaps rather briefly. Abortion, for example, doesn't need really a lot of discussion. The Orthodox Church is life-affirming, not life-negating. Whatever is life-affirming can possibly be orthodox. Whatever is life-negating is absolutely not orthodox. So the whole question of abortion is one that depends a great deal on how we understand human life and how we understand the Christian faith. A lot of people, of course, are not Christians anymore and have no religion at all. So whatever we say in that context has no meaning to them. And this is one thing that activists have got to realize also. The complaints that we have, the negative statements that we make, have really very little meaning to a vast portion of the population. I realize that in America's last federal election for the presidency, abortion and anti-abortion were issues for a large number of people, particularly those who voted Republican. But really, it would have done no good to have elected a Republican president over a Democratic president, because neither of them are going to manage to have the Roe-Wade or Wade-Roe decision of the Supreme Court overturned. Abortion has already entered into the public mind as a basic civil right for women. So our program in regard to abortion has to be one largely of education, and as some people have already undertaken to do, providing viable alternatives in situations where a woman or even a family are completely unable to cope with another child or with a child at all. And this would involve providing some kind of care and direct help for the woman who would have an abortion but might not if an alternative were provided to her. Adoption, of course, is a necessary feature of this. There are many people who simply are incapable of raising a child and simply cannot cope with the prospect of having one. Babies are abandoned far more often than most people realize. And this is why several states have a sort of no-fault abandonment policy, so long as a person abandons a baby or a child in a place where they can be easily found and where they're essentially safe, thus in a hospital emergency room or something like this. And so the best thing that people who are opposed to abortion can do is to provide these alternatives, because the law is really not going to change. And it's people's minds that we have to change. And the one thing for us to remember within the Orthodox community is that whatever is life-affirming can be orthodox. Anything that is life-negating cannot be orthodox, because life is a gift of God, and the first gift of grace, really. And to protect that life is a part of what we should really be reflecting upon. Our activism is not going to do any good, but education, continuing to publicize it, continuing to argue against abortion is, of course, a useful thing, letting people know that we're opposed to it, that sort of thing. But really, some alternatives have got to be provided for the women who would be seeking abortion for some kind of pragmatic reason. Now, by pragmatic, I mean something that's not simply because they don't want to be inconvenienced or they don't want stretch marks or whatever, because those women are not going to respond anyway. That's what I would call cosmetic abortions. Pragmatic abortions are when a family or woman feels like she absolutely cannot cope economically or psychologically with the child. And they're the ones to whom we can provide support and options. And really it is up to people who are opposed to abortion to respond in that manner and to join other groups who are responding in that manner and see what can be done. So that's pretty well what we have to say about abortion, because we don't need to restate any more of our position about it. Life affirmation, not life negation. And realizing that life is a gift from God. And it's something that we have no real, how can we take another human life? And for our point of view, of course, a fetus is a human life. For other people, it isn't. That's part of the education program. I think that in our church schools, though, even at younger ages, we need to be teaching some of these concepts. It's not new. A long time ago, when I was teaching church school at the Russian Orthodox Church in Vancouver on Campbell Avenue, probably 40 some years ago, as a very young man, a 9-year-old asked me about abortion because it was being debated on television, and they had seen it, and they were asking me, is abortion wrong or is it okay? A 9-year-old. So when we think that our church school children are completely ignorant of these things, we should think again. We don't need to bring them out in bold form, but at some point, at some age, before they reach their teenage years, we need to be introducing certain concepts to our children. And among those concepts are the concept of family, the concept of life, and the concept of what children are really all about and what our obligation is to those children. And we need to, at that age already, be life-affirming with our children, with our young people. And one important factor has to be that our children must feel that they have value in the community. They must be made to realize that they have value in not just to their parents, but to a whole parish. I often say that a parish has reached a real fullness of life when you have young children to make noise and elderly people to complain about the noise. Then you have kind of a fullness of church life. But we need to make our children aware that they're loved and valued, that they have value in God's house, and that children are valued even before they're born. That this whole process is a gift of God. And somehow these concepts have to be introduced by us within the church at an early enough age that children have not already formed opinions and views based on what they see on television, here in school, or here in public debates or the public marketplace, so to speak. That's all the time we have for this particular broadcast, and if it follows the pattern that it usually does, we'll be cut off somewhere before we finish the whole thing and try to make it up in a second broadcast. And we'll go on with another question from here in a short while.